Tonight we're going to continue our study in Joshua. We're going to be looking at Joshua chapter 9 this week. So if you'd like to join me, open your Bibles to Joshua chapter 9. I'll be reading that chapter. Again, Joshua chapter 9. Now when all the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, those in the hill country, the western foothills, and along the entire coast of the Great Sea, as far as Lebanon, the kings of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. They came together to make war against Joshua and Israel. However, when the people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they resorted to a ruse. They went as a delegation whose donkey were loaded with worn-out sacks and old wineskins, cracked and matted. The men put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their food supply was dry and moldy. When they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, and said to them and the men of Israel, "We have come from a distant country. Make a treaty with us." The men of Israel said to the Hivites, "But perhaps you live near us. How then can we make a treaty with you?" Verse 8. "We are your servants," they said to Joshua. But Joshua asked, "Who are you, and where do you come from?" They answered, "Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard reports of him, all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites, east of the Jordan, Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth, and other elders of those living in other countries said to us, 'Take provisions for your journey. Go and meet them and say to them, we are your servants. Make a treaty with us.' This bread of ours was warm when we packed it at home on the day we left to come to you. But now see how dry and moldy it is. And these wineskins that we filled were new, but see how cracked they are, and our clothes and sandals are worn out by the very long journey." Verse 14. The men of Israel sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. Then Joshua made a treaty of peace with them to let them live, and the leaders of the assembly ratified it by oath. 3 days after they made the treaty with the Gibeonites, the Israelites heard that they were neighbors living near them. So the Israelites sent out, and on the third day came to their cities, Gibeon, Gibeon, Kepherish, Beroth, and Kirath Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack them, because the leaders of the assembly had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. The whole assembly grumbled against the leaders. But all the leaders answered, "We have given them our oath by the Lord, the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them. We cannot touch them now. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live, so that wrath will not fall on us for breaking the oath, and we swore to them." They continued, "Let them live, but let them be woodcutters and water carriers for the entire community." So the leaders' promise to them was kept. When Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, "Why did you deceive us by saying we live a long way from you, while actually you live near us?" Verse 23. "You are now under a curse. You will never cease to serve as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, "Your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God and had commanded his servant Moses, to give you the whole land and to wipe out all his inhabitants from before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. We are now in your hands. Do to us whatever seems good and right to you." Verse 26. So Joshua saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. That day, he made the Gibeonites woodcutters and water carriers for the community and for the altar of the Lord at the place the Lord would choose. That is what they are to this day. So, previously we've seen the Israelites conquer Jericho. That was back in verse 6. And then in the previous two chapters, we see the battles at Ai. And so now, as Joshua and the Israelites are starting to conquer more and more of the promised land, people are starting to be more scared and wanting to take down the Israelites, wanting to take down the followers of God. You see, just like in sports, when one team is about to face another team that's a big powerhouse, a team that is almost considered to be unbeatable, they try to find ways to figure out how to defeat this unbeatable team. And that's what some of these cities are looking to do. They realize, well, how about we try to band together, be stronger together, and take down this unbeatable powerhouse. However, Gibeon, the city of Gibeon, did not want to do that. Instead, they realized that this group of people, this God, is unbeatable. We don't want to die. We don't want them to take us over. So let's make a treaty with them. That way, maybe we can live with them, live among them. And so they decided to deceive them. Gibeon decided to deceive the Israelites. See, even though they were a very short distance from Gilgal, where the Israelites were, they decided to act like they were from a faraway land. So instead of putting their supplies together with fresh bread, fresh wineskins, water, etc., they decided to act like they've been on a very long journey. So they've had moldy bread, they had old wineskins, they had worn out clothes, and the sandals probably looked like they were falling off. And so they wanted to think that we've come from a faraway country so then they can accept us. And so they did so. These people from Gibeon went to the Israelites and asked for a treaty. However, this was the Israelites, Joshua and the Israelites were still not convinced. We see this in verses 16 through 15, how the Gibeonites asked for the proposal of the treaty. The Gibeonites were lying. They were saying "Oh yeah, we're from a faraway country." They try to give very vague answers, not to give an actual city name, but just trying to say "Yeah, we come from very very far away. We're very far. We're look how moldy our bread is. Look how destroyed our wineskins are. Look at our clothes. We're just tired. We need help. We want to make a treaty with you." And so then Joshua and the Israelites have said, "Okay, we'll make this treaty with you." However, there was a couple of really big issues with Joshua and the Israelites making this treaty. The first one is that they did not consult God on this matter. Now, we remember what in the previous couple chapters and what happened with the Israelites when they attacked Ai before consulting God. Bad things happened. People died in that situation. And in this situation, they were tricked. The Israelites were tricked that these people were actually from a faraway land and that they were actually from very close by to the Israelites. The other reason is that even though the evidence was very questionable, or as the kids these days would say, sketchy or suspect. They agreed on making a treaty with these people. Israel said, well, the evidence isn't fully clear that you're from a faraway country, but we'll still make a treaty with you. But then in the later half of this book, or I'm sorry, this chapter, Joshua and the Israelites realized that the Gibeonites lied. They realized that the Gibeonites were actually very close by, but they just didn't want to be destroyed. However, Joshua and the Israelites knew that they couldn't break their oath. See, they wanted to figure out a way to maybe take them down, because they were probably even more mad because they got tricked. However, they couldn't break the oath because it was a sworn oath by the Lord. It was ratified by the Lord, as in it was by God, it was certified by him. And so then Joshua went to them trying to understand, why did they do that? Why did they lie? You could have just told them the truth. Again, as we learned earlier, is that the Gibeonites were afraid. They were afraid of what would have happened if the Israelites came over. In fact, Gibeonites even talked about is that the servants were clearly told how the servants knew about God and the command that God gave to Moses on taking over the promised land. So they were well aware of what was supposed to happen, but they just didn't want the destruction to happen to them. However, in a way, the destruction did happen. But Joshua did keep the oath. He was not going to kill them. He was not going to get rid of them. However, they became slaves. They became water carriers and woodcutters. These are two types of jobs that were very demanding, very long days, tough days, very physical, demanding tasks. They would have to carry water and do wood cutting for the whole community and for the tabernacle, for the altars to God. All this extra labor because they just decided to not tell the truth. So what they wanted in the end, these Gibeonites, what they really wanted in the end was to be free. Want to be free from destruction. But that's just what they got. And not only were most likely their gods that they worship, the false idols, they were now going to be surrounded by the one and only God. It's kind of like an atheist working in a church. It's a requirement of maybe for example, an atheist, maybe he gets caught with some type of crime and he has to do community service. And his community service is going to be working at a church. He's going to be exposed to God. He's going to be exposed to the greatness and the power of God. And that's what the Gibeonites were going to be exposed to get rid of their false idols and spend more time with God. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's the application of this account? Is it simply, well, don't lie? Well, I mean, sure, you could say that. Don't lie, because God doesn't want us to lie. But there's something more, there's a couple things that are more deeper than just don't lie. The first one is that God keeps his promises. As we see that this oath was ratified by God. It was a sworn oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. This was a specialty oath. They could not go back on it. And why is that? Because the wrath of God was going to be on them. So the wrath of God was going to be before them. So they said, okay, we're not going to break our oath because God doesn't break his oath. See, God doesn't break his promises. And the second application tonight is that we should follow that. We should not break our promises either. Just because someone lies to us, hurts us in some awful way, doesn't mean that we should go back on our oath. I don't know about you, but there's a show that I've enjoyed over the years. It's a TV show called Survivor. If you've never heard of it, it started back when I was real little, like back in the early 2000s. You see, there's a bunch of people, there's usually anywhere between like 16 to 18 people that are put on a deserted island, and they have to survive there, survive from the elements. However, every few days, they would have to vote someone off the island. And whoever's the last one standing is then given the title of sole survivor and the prize of $1 million. Now, during this time, people are making alliances. They're working together so then they can vote certain people out at a certain time frame of the game. However, there are times where people backstab one another, where that people come back and like, wait a second, I gave you my word that I was going to help you, that I was going to support you all the way to the end of the game. But people then maybe backstab, maybe break promises. In fact, it's a game that's known for breaking your word more than keeping your word. But we shouldn't be focused on breaking our word. We should be focused on keeping our word because God keeps his word, God keeps his promises. And we should be more like that. We should keep our promises, just like God. Let us pray.